They say the forest of Dusk Vale is older than memory itself, a labyrinth of trees so ancient their roots have tasted the bones of forgotten gods. When night falls and the moon turns hollow, casting its ghostly glow upon the mist, none dare to tread its paths, for that is when he awakens. The villagers call him the Wraith of the Hollow Moon, though none living have seen his face and returned to tell the tale. Only whispers remain, tales traded in hushed voices beside dying hearths. They speak of a figure cloaked in shadow and blood, with claws like forged blades and eyes that burn with the fire of the condemned. He moves between the trees like smoke, his breath colder than the grave. And when he comes, the forest itself seems to shudder in fear. But the creature haunting Dusk Vale was not always a monster. Long ago, before the curse took hold, he was a man. His name was Kyle Draven, captain of the revered Moonwatch, a proud warrior sworn to protect the northern realms. Under the light of the full moon, his blade never faltered, and his loyalty was as unyielding as the steel he carried. He was a hero, a guardian. Yet pride is a cruel seed, and betrayal often blooms from the soil of love. Kale had a brother, Aaron. Where Kale was strength and steel, Aaron was intellect and ink. A scholar, frail and kind-hearted, he was devoted to the ancient arts. While Kale guarded the kingdom with his sword and shield, Aaron guarded its wisdom, the sacred texts that held the secrets of the world, texts that kept the darkness at bay. One bitter winter night, a discovery was made. Aaron uncovered a secret buried deep within those dusty scrolls, a ritual to draw power directly from the moon itself. With it, a man could transcend mortality. Blinded by ambition, by the warrior's desire for ultimate power, Kale begged his brother to share the knowledge. He saw it as a way to become the ultimate protector, an eternal guardian. But Aaron, with the wisdom of his studies, refused. Such power, he warned, his voice grave, does not lift men, it consumes them. He saw the abyss where Kale saw a summit, but Kale's heart was already tainted by the poison of ambition. His desire had become a festering wound. So under the pale, watching light of that fateful moon, he committed the ultimate betrayal. He turned his blade on his own blood, slaying his kind-hearted brother and taking the forbidden scrolls for himself. He fled with his prize, carrying it deep into the heart of the Dusk Vale woods. There, as the wind died and the world held its breath, he spoke the forbidden words. The moon above turned hollow, a vacant skeletal eye in the sky. And in that moment, Kale Draven ceased to be a man. The lunar light poured into him, not as a blessing, but as a searing divine fire. It burned flesh from bone, twisting his very soul into a thing of shadow and rage. His agonized cries echoed through the ancient forest as his heart turned black and hollow, mirroring the moon that had damned him. The precious scrolls turned to ash in his trembling hands, and from that ash rose a voice, the ancient, powerful voice of the forest itself. "You sought the light," it whispered, a sound of rustling leaves and cracking branches. "Now you will guard it forever." And so Kale Draven became the Wraith of the Hollow Moon, cursed to wander the forest for eternity, a phantom bound by guilt and a terrible, gnawing hunger. His soul became his prison, and his hunger was not for flesh or blood, but for something far more ephemeral, memory. He fed on remembrance itself, drawn to and devouring the lives of those who dared to recall the name Kyle Draven. Every whisper, every fireside tale, every child's frightened mention of who he once was, all of it drew him closer. For to remember him was to awaken him, and to awaken him was to be unmade, your very existence erased from the world. Centuries passed. Villages rose and fell beyond the forest's edge like tides against a timeless shore. Travelers, foolish or lost, vanished beneath the boughs, their names fading from the world as though they had never been. Parents developed a chilling lullaby of a warning. Speak not of the hollow moon, and it shall not see you. The forest kept its secret, and its secret kept the forest. But curiosity, as they say, is a cruel and relentless companion. One night, beneath a sickly silver sky, a young woman named Ilara wandered into the mist. She was a scholar, much like Aaron had been so long ago, chasing whispers of lost magic and forgotten histories. The villagers had begged her not to go, their faces pale with inherited fear. But Ilara sought truth above all things, and truth in Dusk Vale is a hungry, dangerous thing. As she stepped beneath the ancient canopy, a profound silence fell. Not even the wind dared to stir. The air grew cold, sharp with the scent of damp earth and something older, something like grief. The trees loomed like skeletal spectres in the gloom. She pressed on, clutching a small lantern close, its warm light trembling against the oppressive darkness. Then came the whisper. It seemed to come from everywhere, and nowhere at all. "Why do you remember my name?" Ilara froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was a rasp, like stones grinding together in a deep, dark place. "Who's there?" she called out, her own voice sounding small and fragile in the immense silence. The fog parted before her, and from its swirling depths emerged a figure. He was tall, gaunt, and shrouded in the tattered remains of crimson cloth that might have once been a captain's cloak. His dark hair hung in tangled, matted strands, and his eyes blazed like molten gold, filled with an agony that transcended time. His claws, long and sharp as forged blades, gleamed in the lantern's glow, and his mouth was curled into something that was both a snarl and a desperate plea. "You spoke it," he hissed, the sound a winter wind through a grave. "You remembered." Ilara stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. I only came seeking the truth." The wraith's voice softened, losing its edge and taking on a hollow, mournful tone. "Truth is a wound that never heals. I was a man once, and now I am the shadow that devours memory." Gathering a scrap of courage, she raised her lantern, its light flaring against the darkness. For a single, suspended heartbeat, the light washed over his face, and she saw something beneath the monster. She saw a flicker of the man he had been, a profound and endless sorrow etched into his twisted features. "Then let me help you," she whispered, the words leaving her before she could stop them. "Let me set you free." The wraith let out a sound that might have been a laugh, but it was hollow, broken, and utterly devoid of mirth. "Freedom? There is no freedom from the hollow moon. There is only silence." He lunged, his claws reaching not for her throat, but for her heart. But then he stopped. His hand froze in midair, inches from her chest. The light from her lantern had flared again, revealing a small, simple pendant at her throat. It was old, silver, and inscribed upon it was a single name, Aaron Draven. Cale staggered back as if he'd been physically struck. The golden fire in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a flicker of disbelief and confusion. "That name," he rasped, his voice cracking. How do you know it?" Ilara, sensing a shift in the spectral tide, stepped forward. "He was my ancestor," she said, her voice steady now. "His journals spoke of you, of the brother who betrayed him, but whom he still loved, even in the end." The forest, which had been a place of menace, fell utterly silent. The wraith trembled, his monstrous form seeming less solid. For the first time in an eternity of hunger and rage, Kyle felt something else, remorse. A wave of guilt so profound it threatened to unmake him. High above, the hollow moon began to wane, its sickly light faltering as if in sympathy. If he forgave me," Kyle whispered, the words barely audible, "then let the curse end." The forest itself seemed to exhale, a collective sighing sound of 1,000 leaves. The wraith's body began to dissolve, his form breaking apart and scattering like smoke into the morning mist. His burning golden eyes faded last, and as they did, the hollow moon dimmed completely, leaving only the faint, gentle glow of the approaching dawn. Ilara stood alone in the clearing, the silver pendant warm against her chest. Behind her, the forest already seemed lighter, the shadows thinner, the silence less cruel. The wraith of the hollow moon was gone. Kyle Dreven was free. But still, even now, on cold nights when the moon hangs pale and empty in the sky, some who wander near Duskvale claim to hear a voice in the fog, a voice that is no longer a hiss of hunger, but a soft, sorrowful, and finally peaceful whisper. Remember me, not as a monster, but as a man. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of Duskvale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the shadows. Until next time, be careful what you whisper in the dark. The moon hung heavy in the sky that night, pale and swollen, spilling silver light across the treetops. Its glow reached the edges of the grove, but it dared not seep into the darkened heart where no bird sang and no wind stirred. The villagers knew to avoid this place, for within its tangled roots and shadowed depths grew the hollow sentinel, a tree unlike any other, half wood, half flesh, and wholly cursed. No one knew how old it was. Some said it had stood since the dawn of the world, when gods still walked among mortals. Others whispered it was the prison of a terrible spirit who defied death itself. But everyone agreed on one thing. When the moon was full, the sentinel awakened. Its bark would split, glowing red with lines like molten veins. From its trunk, a monstrous face would emerge, twisted with rage, its gaping mouth filled with splinters as sharp as knives. The creature's arms, long and knotted like roots, would tear free from the earth, clawing the soil with fingers like broken branches. Its eyes burned with a ghostly fire, and its voice echoed with the rumble of storms and the wailing of the forgotten. The elders warned the young never to wander near, but warnings alone can never truly tame human curiosity. The legend of the Sentinel began centuries ago, before the village even had a name. There was a man named Dravik, a mighty warrior who could not be defeated. He sought power not to protect his people, but for his own glory. Dravik turned from the gods of his ancestors, bowing instead to darker beings who promised strength beyond mortal measure. He was gifted with unyielding flesh and the strength of 10 men, but with every battle he fought, his hunger for blood grew stronger. Soon he waged war not only against his enemies, but against his own kin. His cruelty became legend, and his heart turned to stone. One fateful night, under a full moon, the gods descended. They struck Dravik down, but found that death alone could not contain him. His rage clawed its way from the grave, burning even their divine shackles. So they bound him in another form. They cursed him, trapping him in the trunk of a tree at the heart of the grove, where roots and soil would hold him for eternity. His body became bark. His veins turned to sap and molten fire, but his spirit remained, watching, seething, waiting. The hollow sentinel was born. Generations passed, and the village flourished just beyond the cursed grove. But the old stories were not forgotten. Children grew up with them as bedtime warnings. Stay away from the grove when the moon is full, or the sentinel will take you. Ira, a young woman of the village, never put much stock in such tales. She was bold, restless, and often laughed at the fears of others. She would dare her friends to follow her near the grove's edge, testing their courage. Though she never crossed into its heart, she longed to glimpse what was hidden. The thought of a cursed warrior bound in a tree thrilled her more than it frightened her. One evening, as the harvest festival wound down and the moon rose fat and bright, Ira slipped away from the celebrations. The villagers were too busy with songs and drink to notice her departure. Carrying only a lantern, she walked the path into the forest, her heart pounding with both fear and anticipation. The closer she came, the quieter the world grew. No crickets sang, no owls hooted, and the leaves stood still as though the grove itself held its breath. When she reached the sentinel, her lantern flickered. Before her loomed a colossal tree, its bark gnarled and scarred, rising higher than any other. Strange red cracks glowed faintly along its trunk, as if fire pulsed just beneath its surface. Ira stared in awe. For a long moment, nothing stirred. Then the ground trembled, the tree shuddered, and a deep groan echoed through the clearing. Ira gasped as the cracks widened, spilling light like molten lava. A face pushed itself from the trunk, snarling, its eyes igniting with fury. Roots tore from the soil, twisting into limbs that reached toward her. The hollow sentinel had awakened. Ira froze. The tales were true, terrifyingly true. The monster's gaze fixed upon her, and its voice thundered in the night. Another mortal, daring to trespass. You carry the same arrogance as those before you. The gods curse me, but they curse you all as well. Blood calls for blood. She stumbled back, but the ground split beneath her, glowing veins spreading like cracks of fire. The air grew heavy, and she felt her very spirit tremble beneath the weight of the sentinel's presence. Yet something inside her, stubbornness, pride, or perhaps destiny, held her ground. "Why do you hate us?" she shouted over the roar. "We did nothing to you." The sentinel bared its jagged maw. "Nothing. You thrive while I rot in chains. Your kind forgets, but I remember. I fought for power, and they feared me. They bound me here, cursed to hunger, cursed to wait. And you dare ask why I hate?" Ira swallowed hard, realizing that her village's safety had been bought with his eternal torment. She pitied him, yet she also feared what would happen if he ever broke free. His anger burned hotter than the fire in his veins. The monster's massive hand, gnarled like the roots of an ancient oak, stretched toward her. "Join me, mortal. Feed me your spirit, and I will rise again." Ira raised her lantern high, though its weak flame was nothing before the sentinel's infernal glow. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If you were once a man, then somewhere within you there must still be something more than rage. You were cursed, yes, but curses are made to be broken, not spread." Her words pierced the night, and for a brief heartbeat the sentinel hesitated. The red glow dimmed, and the monstrous face twisted not with fury, but with pain, as if an ancient memory stirred beneath the bark. Then, with a roar that shook the grove, he slammed his claws into the earth. The cracks sealed, the glow faded, and the monstrous visage retreated into the trunk once more. The grove fell silent. Ira collapsed to her knees, gasping as the lantern flickered out. In the distance, the village bells rang, signaling midnight. She rose, shaken but alive, and stumbled back toward home. She told no one what had happened, not then, not ever. She knew that the sentinel still slept within the grove, bound but restless, and that her words had reached something deep inside him. From that night forward, Ira visited the grove only once, each year, under the full moon. She never went too close, never tempted fate again, but she would stand at the edge and whisper into the stillness. Sometimes she thought she saw the faintest flicker of red in the tree's scars, as though the sentinel was listening. The villagers continued to tell their stories, to warn their children of the cursed grove. But none knew that a fragile thread had been woven between human and monster, between pity and rage, curse and hope. Perhaps one day the god's binding would weaken, and the hollow sentinel would break free. Perhaps his fury would drown the world in fire and ash. Or perhaps, just perhaps, he might remember the voice of a girl who saw more than a monster and choose another path. Until that day, the grove remains dark and silent, beneath the watchful glow of the moon. Thanks so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. See you next time. Somber, atmospheric music begins, hinting at mystery and sorrow. On maps, it has no name. Long before cartographers put ink to parchment, this city was erased from memory. Yet travelers still whisper of it in hushed tones, a place where the very air trembles with dread, where a blood-red moon burns eternally above broken spires. It is a city guarded by two black hounds with eyes of fire, sentinels at the threshold between the living and the damned. No mortal dares to linger near its gates. The hounds are always there, silent, watching. They never bark, never growl. They simply wait. And when courage cracks, when a traveler's resolve falters into fear, those glowing eyes are the last thing they see before silence claims another soul. But tonight, that silence is about to be broken. Music shifts, becoming more determined, hinting at a journey. He is known only as the Wanderer. Cailan has walked through deserts that baked the marrow from his bones and across mountains that bled with the remains of the dead. Yet none of those trials unnerved him like the narrow, ash-strewn streets of the forgotten city. His boots strike the cracked stone, the sound echoing into an unnerving stillness. The air smells of rust and decay, as though a great fire long ago burned everything worth saving. He adjusts the heavy chain at his belt, the only weapon he trusts. In the distance, he sees them, two black silhouettes against the crimson glow of the city's heart. Their eyes burn like embers fanned by an unseen breath, twin statues carved from shadow and flame. Cailan feels their gaze long before he draws near. It presses against his ribs, a physical weight that slows his steps and dries his throat. But he presses on, for this journey is not his own. He carries a prophecy. Music becomes more epic and tragic, telling a story of the past. Long ago, this city was a jewel of devotion, a place where scholars and priests claimed to hear the voice of their God. But their God was insatiable. It demanded more than prayers. It demanded sacrifice. Drunk on reverence, the priests offered not lambs or cattle, but the blood of their own people. The streets ran red, the city burned with chants of obedience, yet still the God was not satisfied. When the first screams of rebellion rose, when mothers wept over lifeless children, and fathers raised swords against the temple, the God answered their defiance with a curse. The city crumbled into shadow, sealed away from the world of men. Its towers smoldered, but did not fall. Its moon burned, but did not set. And from the black flame of divine wrath, two guardians were born, hounds whose purpose was neither mercy nor vengeance, but silence. They were created to keep the world out, and to keep the city's terrible secret in. Music builds suspense, focusing on the impending confrontation. Cailan stops at the base of the Grand Avenue, leading toward the hounds. Their massive forms shift in the dim light, statuesque yet unmistakably alive. Their chests rise and fall in perfect, silent unison. He remembers the words of the oracle who sent him here. Only the one who carries grief greater than fear may pass. Cailan does not fear death, not after what he has lost. His village, his home, was razed in a single night by raiders who bore no flag. His daughter's laugh, his wife's song, all turned to ash. All that remains is the memory of fire. And so he sought this place, chasing whispers of a power hidden within its walls, a power great enough to turn back fate itself. The hounds stir. One lifts its head, the other rises slowly to its feet. Their eyes flare like furnaces, and the silence thickens until Cailan swears he can hear his own heartbeat cracking under the pressure. He takes a breath. He takes a step. Action-oriented music begins, tense and dramatic. The first hound moves with a slow, dreadful inevitability, padding into the center of the street. Its shadow stretches long, swallowing Cailan's feet. A low, guttural growl rumbles from its chest, like stone grinding against stone. Cailan grips his chain. He has fought beasts before, wolves, bears, and men, whose cruelty made them less than human. But this is no creature of flesh. This is something born from the marrow of fear itself. The hound lunges. Kalen swings the chain, its steel link sparking against the stone. But the weapon passes through the creature's flank, as if striking smoke. In an instant, the hound's jaws clamp down, not on his flesh, but on his very soul. Kalen staggers as images flood his mind. His wife's final scream, his daughter's outstretched hand, the thatched roof of his home devoured by flame. The hound is feeding, drawing strength from his grief. With a roar of defiance, Kalen wraps the chain around his own arm, anchoring himself to the pain. "You cannot take what I give freely," he shouts into the suffocating quiet. "My grief is mine." The hound freezes, its fiery eyes dim. Slowly, it retracts, stepping aside. But the trial is not over. The second hound rises. Music becomes eerie, quiet, and deeply psychological. This one is larger, its eyes colder, less like flame, more like frozen embers. It does not lunge, it does not growl, it only watches, and the silence deepens until Kalen feels as if sound itself has been stripped from the world. His breath makes no noise, his boots make no echo. Even his thoughts seem hushed, lost in a vacuum. Then within that profound silence, a voice speaks, not in words, but in pure, crushing weight. "Why do you seek what lies within?" Kalen's lips move, but no sound comes. His answer is carved into his heart. "To undo what has been lost, to burn those who destroyed my blood." The hound's gaze narrows. The silence presses tighter, suffocating, crushing his bones, blurring his vision. He feels himself unraveling at the seams, but he remembers the Oracle Aes words one last time, "Only grief greater than fear." He drops to his knees. He bows his head. He does not resist the silence. He embraces it. "I am already hollow," he whispers into the void, though no sound escapes. "What more can you take from me?" A single, powerful chord strikes as the music swells with resolution. The silence shatters like glass. The hound steps aside, its eyes dimming to faint embers. Kalen staggers to his feet, chest heaving, his body clammy and heavy. But he has passed. Before him, the great gates of the citadel yawn open. Flames dance in its windows, casting grotesque shadows of forgotten towers. The city pulses as though it's alive, its heart beating in rhythm with the burning moon above. Kalen does not smile. He does not celebrate. He only walks forward, his grief carried not as a burden, but as a weapon. The hounds lie back upon the stones, their eternal vigil unbroken. The city does not belong to him, not yet. Within its walls waits something older than vengeance, older than gods, a power that can rewrite the marrow of existence itself. And Kalen, broken though he is, steps willingly into its embrace. Music fades back to the somber, atmospheric opening theme. At the gate, the hounds remain, unblinking, unyielding. The silence returns, deep and eternal. Another soul has passed, and the city has welcomed him. The moon does not set, the embers do not die, and the forgotten city waits, as it always has, for the next grief-stricken wanderer to test the eyes of fire. Music fades to silence. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss our next descent into the unknown. We have many more tales to tell. Until next time, stay curious. The blood-red sky hung like a wound above the world, its light staining the jagged cliffs and the ancient stones of the bridge. It was said the sun had once risen here, golden and kind, but the Spider Queen had claimed this valley, and daylight never dared return. The bridge itself was all that remained of an empire swallowed by ruin. Its stones were cracked, its arches leaning like the bones of a tired corpse. Few souls approached it willingly, for the Spider Queen's shadow ruled the path, her webs glistening like veins of silver in the scarlet air. Those who did attempt to cross never returned. Their belongings, rusted swords, broken packs, shattered boots, littered the rocks below, a warning etched in decay. And yet, one man came. His name was Darian, and his boots struck the broken path with purpose, though a primal fear gnawed at his bones. He carried no banner, no name of noble blood, and had no company of soldiers at his back. He had only a satchel, a rusted blade, and the memory of screams that would not leave him. His village had been taken in the night, not by raiders, not by fire, but by the brood, shadows with 8 legs and a bottomless hunger in their fangs, pouring down from the cliffs like a tide of living death. They had dragged mothers and children into the abyss, their cries smothered beneath the sound of chittering. Darian had been spared by a cruel twist of fate, trapped under the corpse of a fallen comrade. When he finally crawled free at dawn, the valley was empty, save for the single, horrifying trail leading toward the bridge, toward her, the Spider Queen. The air grew colder as Darian approached the looming arch of stone. Webs, thick as rope, clung to the rocks. The sticky threads trembled in the wind, whispering faintly as though they were alive. He paused at the threshold. The bridge stretched before him, broken in places, its stones cracked and overgrown with a dark, creeping moss. Beyond it loomed a cavern carved into the cliffside, yawning like the mouth of a hungry god. And there she was. The Spider Queen's body was vast, black as obsidian, her legs long enough to span the bridge in a single step. Her fangs glistened with venom, and her abdomen pulsed with an eerie red light. Countless eyes glittered in the shadows of her monstrous form, but it was her face that froze Darian's blood. For above the chittering mandibles and the rows of eyes, a woman's visage emerged, pale, beautiful, and utterly cruel. Her lips curved into a smile, too perfect, too sharp. "Another pilgrim," she purred, her voice a chorus of whispers that seemed to come from every direction at once. "Come to cross my bridge." Darian gripped his blade, the cold metal a small comfort. "I've come for my people. You took them." The Spider Queen tilted her head, and her laughter echoed like the sound of silk tearing. "They walk with me now, little man. My children hunger, and I feed them well." Darian took a defiant step onto the bridge, his legs trembling. The stones groaned under his weight, threatening to give way. "I will not leave without them," he said. His voice shook, but the words carried the unyielding weight of truth. The Queen's smile widened. Bravery. Or is it despair? Both taste the same to me. Her legs shifted, and the entire bridge trembled under her immense weight. She leaned close, her pale face just inches from his own. Her breath was cold, smelling of dust and old blood. "But I am merciful," she whispered, the words a chilling promise. "Cross my bridge, and if you survive, your people may yet be free. Fail, and you will join them, body and soul." Darian swallowed hard, his throat dry. He knew the stories. No one survived her trials. But the grief burning in his chest was hotter than any fear. He gave a single resolute nod. The bridge shook as the Queen withdrew into the shadows of her cavern. Her voice slithered across the stones. "Walk, wanderer, walk, and let us see if your heart is strong enough." Darian took his first step. The stone beneath him crumbled instantly, a piece of the bridge falling into the abyss below. He steadied himself, forcing a breath into his burning lungs. Another step, then another. The webs around him stirred. Shapes descended from the cavern above. Spiders, each the size of a large hound. Their legs clicked against the stone, their eyes glittering with predatory hunger. Darian swung his blade. Steel met chitin, and sparks flew in the red gloom. One creature shrieked as he cleaved its leg, black ichor spraying across the stones. Another leapt, its fangs snapping inches from his face. He shoved his blade upward, impaling it through the mouth, but it was no use. For every spider he cut down, 2 more appeared. Their bodies clogged the narrow bridge, their shrieks deafening. Darien stumbled, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his arms shaking with exhaustion. He knew he could not win, not against all of them. And then he remembered the oracle's words, whispered to him by a dying priestess from his village. She does not fear steel, she fears sacrifice. The brood swarmed him, forcing him back toward the crumbling edge. His heel slipped on a broken stone. The abyss gaped below, endless and hungry. He looked at his blade, dull, bloodied, and ultimately useless. He looked at his arms, scarred, tired, and hopelessly mortal, and in that moment he finally understood. With a cry that split the silence, Darien dropped the sword. He slashed open his own palm with a jagged rock. Blood, bright and vivid, spilled across the stones, a stark crimson against the black webbing. Instantly the spiders froze, their bodies trembled, their fangs clicking in unison. The queen's voice filled the air, sharp and hungry now. Ah, sacrifice! Her vast body shifted, her pale face emerging once more from the shadows. Her eyes glowed with a raw hunger, with a deep, ancient need. "You would give yourself to me?" she asked, her voice dripping with a mix of mockery and anticipation. Darien lifted his bleeding hand, presenting it to her. "Take me, but release them. Release my people." For the first time the Spider Queen hesitated. Her eyes flickered, the human part of her warring with the beast. Her fangs dripped venom onto the stones. The brood stirred restlessly, awaiting her command. Then she laughed, a sound that seemed to split the red sky. "So be it," she hissed. "One soul for many. A bargain is struck." Her colossal legs wrapped around Darien, lifting him effortlessly into the air. Her fangs hovered above his chest, their venom burning cold against his skin even before they pierced it. His blood dripped onto the stones below, and where it landed, the thick webs trembled and parted. From the cavern beyond, figures began to stumble into the light. The villagers, pale, starved, but alive. They blinked at the blood-red sky, their chains falling from their wrists like dust. Darien managed a faint smile, even as the venom seared into his veins. His people were free. The last thing he saw was the Spider Queen's face, her beautiful, cruel smile widening as his heartbeat faltered for the final time. The villagers fled that cursed valley, never to return. They told stories of the man who had bought their freedom with his own blood, whose name would not be forgotten. But the bridge still stands, the sky is still red, and the Spider Queen still waits, her brood whispering in the shadows, her hunger never truly sated. For though one man's sacrifice freed a village, the bridge always demands a toll, and sooner or later, another wanderer will come. Thank you so much for joining me for this dark tale. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more. It truly helps the channel grow and ensures you won't miss our next journey into the shadows. Until next time, stay safe. In the frostbitten plains, where the wind howls like tormented souls, a figure rides. Neither living nor dead, he is the Bone Knight. His armor, forged from blackened steel and etched with forgotten runes, gleams under a pale, ghostly moon. Upon his skeletal face, no emotion stirs, only the relentless will of vengeance propels him forward. By his side prowls Frostbane, the Wolf of Winter, a beast of impossible size, with fur as white as the deepest snowdrifts and eyes that glow with the light of ancient stars. Together, they are a myth whispered on the icy winds, guardians of a forsaken realm where the souls of Oathbreakers wander, forever lost. But the Bone Knight was not always this spectre of despair. He was once Sir Cailan of Avarn, the noble and loyal defender of the Northern Realms. He was beloved by his people, devoted to the king he served with unwavering honor. But loyalty is a fragile shield against the poison of jealousy. Lies whispered in the dark corners of the court turned a king's heart to ice. For crimes he did not commit, Cailan was betrayed, cast into the abyss of frost to perish in its eternal blizzard. Yet death did not offer him peace. As his last breath mingled with the frozen air, he uttered a vow of vengeance. That vow was heard not by gods, but by something far older, something crueler. It raised him from his icy grave, forging him anew in hatred and sorrow. Centuries passed. The tale of Sir Calin faded, his name lost to all but the wind and the stones. He became a legend, a scary story told by firesides to frighten children. But the North remembers, and now, as a long, unforgiving winter descends upon the mortal lands, whispers of the old tales have begun to stir once more. Armies are on the march. They cross the frozen border, their banners bright against the snow, their goal to conquer the North and plunder the treasures buried deep beneath the ice. Leading them is King Vareth, the last descendant of the very bloodline that betrayed Sir Calin all those centuries ago. From the dizzying heights of the glacier cliffs, the Bone Knight watches them come. His hollow eyes, once filled with loyalty and light, now burn with a spectral fire. The familiar arrogance in the marching king's posture, the sigil on his banners, it all awakens a cold, dormant rage. He turns to the magnificent beast at his side, the only companion he has known in his long, lonely vigil. "The blood of kings returns," he whispers, his voice a hollow echo, like stones grinding in a forgotten tomb. "Shall we greet them, my old friend?" Frostbane answers with a low growl, a sound like thunder rolling through distant mountains. The snow around them begins to swirl, drawn into a furious vortex by the wolf's ancient power. Together, master and beast descend from the cliffs, melting into the raging heart of the storm. The mortal soldiers trudging through the deepening snow see nothing at first. Their torches sputter, casting a feeble, flickering light that the blizzard seems to swallow whole. Their hearts are heavy with the cold and the weary march. Then the wind shifts. It carries not just snow, but a palpable sense of dread. The night itself seems to rise against them. Out of the white maelstrom, two burning lights appear, like malevolent stars piercing the veil of frost. The ground trembles, and then they see him, the wolf, massive, terrible, its jaws glinting like freshly forged blades. And upon its back, a revenant in black armor, his crimson cloak snapping in the wind like a fresh wound torn in the fabric of the world. "Who dares cross into the realm of the damned?" The Bone Knight's voice booms, echoing across the frozen wastes. "Turn back, mortals, lest your souls be bound to the frost forever." Fear, colder than any blizzard, creeps into the soldiers' ranks. They falter, their formations breaking as men stare in horror at the apparition before them. But King Vareth, blinded by pride and the supposed strength of his lineage, rides forward. His sword is drawn, its polished steel a stark contrast to the encroaching darkness. "We come for what is ours by right," he shouts, his voice straining against the gale. "The North belongs to no spectre. Step aside, Wraith, or I shall scatter your bones upon the wind." Calin stares at the mortal king. In that voice, in that unearned arrogance, he hears the echo of the past, the same foolish pride that condemned him centuries ago. The cycle has come full circle. A grim finality settles over him. "Then come," says the Bone Knight, his voice devoid of all warmth. "Let us end what your forefathers began." The battle that ensues is not a clash of armies, but a storm of death and despair. Frostbane is a tempest of white fur and black rage, tearing through the ranks of soldiers as if they were made of paper. His claws shatter shields, and his jaws crush steel and bone with equal ease. Arrows, tipped with fear and desperation, break harmlessly against his hide. Magical fire, conjured by southern magi, freezes in mid-air, its power extinguished by the absolute cold that radiates from the great wolf. Above the chaos, the Bone Knight moves with an unholy, mesmerizing grace. His sword, the Blade of Vows, sings a song of sorrow and retribution, cleaving through the finest plate armor as if it were silk. Wherever he rides, a deadly frost blooms in his wake. Wherever his sword falls, an eternal silence follows. Yet King Vareth presses on. He is driven now, not by pride, but by a desperate cocktail of fury and terror. He parries and thrusts with a courage born of madness, his enchanted blade flashing against the gloom. He finally reaches the knight, and their swords meet. Steel clashes against spectral steel, and the sound is like the sky itself, breaking apart, a thunderclap that shakes the very foundations of the mountains. "You are no god," Vareth cries, his face a mask of sweat and snow. "You are a relic, a curse upon this land." The Bone Knight's hollow gaze fixes upon him. For the first time in centuries, a flicker of something other than vengeance stirs within him, a deep, profound sorrow. "And you," Cailan replies, his voice trembling with the weight of ages, "are its last sin." With a final, shattering blow, the Bone Knight strikes. King Vareth's enchanted blade breaks, and the Blade of Vows finds its mark. The king falls from his horse, his golden crown tumbling from his head to land silently in the snow, its jewels already dimming in the pale, merciless light. As his life ebbs away, his gaze meets the hollow sockets of the knight, who has ended him and ended his line. "What are you?" the dying king whispers, his last breath a cloud of fading warmth in the frigid air. Cailan lowers his sword. He looks down at the mortal whose bloodline had created him, whose death has now unmade him. Silence hangs heavy, broken only by the whimpering wind. "Once," the Bone Knight says, his voice a ghost of what it once was, "I was justice." He turns away from the fallen king. Frostbane, his grim work done, lifts his muzzle to the sky and lets out a howl, a long, mournful, endless cry that carries across the tundra. A song of sorrow for a master whose burden is finally lifted. As if answering the wolf's lament, the storm begins to still. The snow settles, and for the first time in a forgotten age, the faint light of dawn touches the horizon. Vengeance has been fulfilled, the curse has weakened, but peace does not come for the Bone Knight. As the first rays of sunlight break over the ice, he feels his ancient armor tremble. Cracks, glowing with a pale, ethereal light, split across its surface. The dark spell that bound his soul to his bones, that held him between worlds, is unraveling. He looks skyward, where the aurora shimmers like a bridge to the afterlife. "It is time," he whispers. Frostbane turns to him, his star-like eyes gleaming with an ancient knowing sorrow. The knight places a gauntleted hand upon the wolf's great head, a final, silent gesture of gratitude. "You have been my only companion, my only truth in this long darkness. Guard this land, old friend. Let no new darkness rise in my place." With those final words, the Bone Knight steps into the pillar of dawn light. He does not burn, he simply dissolves, vanishing into the morning. His blackened armor falls to the snow, empty and silent, its runes fading into nothingness. The legend of Sir Cailan is finally over. Frostbane remains alone on the vast, silent tundra. He lifts his gaze one last time to the heavens, then turns and vanishes back into the endless white, his lonely howl echoing through eternity, a reminder of the vow that once bound a man to vengeance and a wolf to sorrow. And so, the legend of the Bone Knight ends, but the story of the Wolf of Winter, the eternal guardian of the North, lives on. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the frozen North. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more tales from the realms of fantasy. We'll see you in the next one. Before the rise and fall of empires, long before humanity gave names to the distant stars, there was only the red sun. Imagine a blazing, blood-colored eye watching over a nascent world, its gaze merciless and absolute. From its searing light, the great deserts were born, vast, silent oceans of dust where time itself seemed to crumble into grains of sand. In this ancient age, when gods were not yet myths and still walked among mortals, the red sun chose its servants. They were beings neither fully human nor divine, and they became known as the priests of the Red Sun, the heralds of balance and judgment. Their faces remained forever hidden behind pale, emotionless masks, each marked with crimson sigils said to be painted in the blood of the very first dawn. Beneath those masks there were no mortal eyes, only an abyss of darkness. They had willingly surrendered their sight to the sun, and in return they were granted a far greater power, the vision of truth, the ability to see the sins and destinies woven into the souls of all living things. They wandered the endless deserts in profound silence, their footsteps leaving no impression upon the sand, as if they were ghosts of the light itself. Their robes, woven from gold and scarlet thread, shimmered under the unforgiving sun. They carried relics of immense celestial power, amulets forged from the cores of fallen meteors, and pendants etched with the forgotten prayers of extinct civilizations. Each ornament was not mere decoration, but a memory, a heavy token of a world judged and found wanting. Yet the priests were never truly alone. At their side walked the hounds of eternity. These were towering beings possessing the form of men, but crowned with the heads of sacred beasts. Their fur shone like sun-bleached stone, and their eyes burned with a divine, unwavering purpose. It was said that each hound was bound to a priest by an oath as old as creation itself, a living embodiment of loyalty and wrath. When the priests spoke, their whispers carried the weight of prophecy, and the hounds listened. But when the hounds howled, the very heavens trembled. Centuries passed. In the age of the Third Dawn, mortals built their first crude temples from sand and bone. But with creation came arrogance. Humanity no longer looked to the heavens with reverence, but with a burning, selfish ambition. Kings began to declare themselves gods. Sorcerers, hungry for power, harnessed forbidden light, twisting it to serve their own ends. The sky itself grew dim, choked with the smoke and pride of a world that had forgotten its place. And so, the red sun stirred from its long slumber. A storm unlike any the world had ever seen swept across the desert, turning day into an oppressive night and the sky into a canvas of flame. From the heart of that celestial tempest, the priests emerged once more, their crimson and gold robes glinting ominously beneath the burning sky. The people of the desert, witnessing this terrifying spectacle, fell to their knees in awe and fear, believing the gods had finally come to bless them. But the priests did not come to offer blessings. As they drew near, their voices, like 1,000 whispers carried on the wind, spoke a single chilling message. "We are not your saviors," they said in unison. "We are your mirror." Their words were law. Their silence was judgment. One by one, they stood before the burgeoning cities of men. When they raised their hands, the hounds of eternity lifted their heads and let out a howl, a sound so pure and so terrible that it shattered glass, crumbled stone, and broke the will of entire armies. In the presence of this divine reckoning, those who had lived lives of deceit felt their hearts turn to ash. The proud were stripped of their crowns, their authority dissolving into nothing. The greedy watched in horror as their hoarded gold melted into worthless dust. Wherever the priests passed, truth was laid bare. Every hidden secret, every whispered betrayal, every sin concealed in the shadows was dragged kicking and screaming into the unforgiving light of the red sun. No fortress could hide it, no shadow could contain it. And as mortals wept, their civilizations crumbling under the weight of their own falsehoods, the priests simply turned and walked on, their masks unchanging, their unseen eyes witnessing all. But not all accepted this judgment. In the magnificent city of Anukar, a king named Sareth, bold and defiant, refused to bow. He gathered his vast armies, their banners snapping in the hot wind, and declared in a voice that echoed across the plains, "No god shall rule me. I am the son of men." He commanded his soldiers to strike down the Red Sun's servants, to tear away their masks and expose the faces hidden beneath. The soldiers advanced, their blades gleaming. But as the first sword touched a priest's robe, the steel didn't just break, it dissolved into a cascade of brilliant light. At that moment, the hounds of eternity rose to their full, terrifying height. Their jaws unhinged, with a roar that seemed to split the very sky, a sound of pure, unadulterated cosmic fury. What followed was not a battle, but a cleansing. The sands around the city turned a deep, visceral crimson. Anukar burned for 7 days and 7 nights, a funeral pyre for arrogance, until nothing remained but a scar of blackened, melted glass upon the desert floor. From that day forward, no living thing ever grew where the proud city once stood. Travelers who dared to approach the ruins at dusk claimed they could still hear the hounds' howls carried on the wind, a timeless, haunting warning to all who would dare defy the will of the Red Sun. After the fall of Anukar, the priests of the Red Sun withdrew once more into the heart of the endless desert. Mortals, humbled and terrified, whispered that they had returned to the Temple of the Horizon, a mythical place beyond the edge of the world, beyond time itself, where the sun descends each night to drink the blood of the earth. There, it was said, the priests patiently awaited the coming of the final eclipse, the prophesied moment when all light would fade and the last judgment would begin. More centuries passed. Empires rose on the ashes of the old, their languages and gods changing like the shifting dunes. The desert, patient and eternal, swallowed every trace of those who had once challenged the heavens. The priests of the Red Sun faded from history into myth, their story told around campfires. The Red Sun itself became a mere symbol, painted on the banners of new kings, carved into the tombs of forgotten pharaohs, invoked by zealots who had long forgotten the true meaning of its light. Yet, even now, some still claim to see them. When the sun burns a fiery red at dusk and the horizon bleeds across the sands, creating shimmering mirages, lone travelers have spoken of 5 figures walking silently through the heat haze. One figure in the center, masked and radiant, flanked by 4 towering guardians. Their robes seem to shimmer like liquid fire, and the soft clinking of their celestial ornaments sounds like the chains of remembrance. They do not speak, but their presence radiates a coldness that chills the soul. Those who accidentally meet their gaze, though no eyes can be seen beneath the masks, feel the crushing weight of their entire existence. Every deed, every thought, every choice they have ever made and ever will make is laid bare before them. Many fall to their knees, overwhelmed by tears of regret or joy. Some are said to flee into the desert, driven to madness by the sheer, unvarnished truth of their own soul. The priests pass them by, neither condemning nor forgiving. Their task has never been vengeance. It is, and always has been, truth. For truth itself is the Red Sun, eternal, merciless, and unblinking. And when the final eclipse finally comes, when the sky grows dark at midday and the stars hide their faces in fear, the priests of the Red Sun shall walk the earth one last time. Behind them will stride their hounds, their collars gleaming with trapped starlight. They will stand before the gates of every city, every palace, every temple, and they will whisper the same words spoken at the dawn of time. We are not your saviors. We are your mirror. And under their unwavering gaze, the world will finally see itself for what it truly is, and burn with the glorious, painful light of truth. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the lore of the Red Sun. If you enjoyed this story, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more tales from the forgotten corners of imagination. I'll see you in the next one.